Hi, this is Simon Upstall and welcome to another tutorial for Apple Motion. And today we're going to be taking a look at this pretty cool effect that's based on a really rather brilliant idea by Andrew Kramer at videocopilot.net. And I do urge you to check out his original tutorial for After Effects. But here we're going to be doing it in motion, so let's get started. So first of all, let's take a look at our project setup. I'm going for 1920 1080, 24 frames a second, and a duration of 3 seconds. So the first thing we want to do is let's bring in a gradient for our background. Come down here, bring in gradient, come to the inspector. Let's select the preset called grayscale. Let's open up the gradient. Let's switch to radial. And then I'm just going to set up these start and end points here. So negative 540 for X, positive 540 for Y start, 0 for X there, and negative 540 there. And then I'm just going to set this to full black. And then this one here to, let's bring it down to around 0.25, something like that. Next, I'm going to create a new group. So object new group, and I'm going to type in some text, and then I'm going to scale it up, reset the baseline, so negative 200, and then center it and center a line. So we've now got this nice big text. So I've relabeled that group as text source. I've called it text but actually you can put any old object in here as the source that you want to smash up. We're going to be using text for the purposes of this tutorial. So let's make another new group, object new group. First of all, I want to bring in the generator called Truche Tiles. Add into that group. And come to the inspector. I'm going to add an image mask, and I'm going to use that text source as the mask source. So let's set up the Truche tiles. Let's have a tile size of 15, and let's bring that white down to sort of mid-grey, somewhere like that. Then I want to import a texture. So I'm going to bring in cracked concrete, bring that in, right-click, add image mask, and again, let's use the text source. So with this image mask selected, I'm going to come to Filters, Stylize, and Min-Max. And let's enter a value of 10. And then I want to come to the blend mode for that layer and set it to multiply. So I've called this group unmatted text, and I'm going to make a new group for it to sit in. Or in fact, I'm actually going to right-click and just group that. And this new group I've called unextruded text. And I'm going to make another group out of that. So right-click, group. And so that new top group I've called extruded text. And the reason for that is I'm going to come to Filters, Stylize, and bring in the Extrude filter there. Let's set an angle of 240 to get us started. Let's have a distance of, I think, around 20. And let's bring the front and back brightness way down. We really don't want to draw attention to this. We just want something there. Give us a sense of depth, something like that. So then what we want to do is we want to create the slash. And to do that, we're going to make another new group. And we're going to select the rectangle tool, and we're going to draw a long, thin rectangle like this. Come to geometry, and let's set its width to 1920 and its height to something like 80. And let's just make sure it's centered up. Then we are going to come to Filters, Stylize, and Crystallize. And you see what this has done is it's given us a nice roughness to the edge. So obviously we don't want this to be animated, so we'll set the speed to 0. Now, part of the problem of Crystallize is that it creates sort of semi-transparent areas. If we zoom in, you can see there's little grey areas in there. We want to get rid of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to add color levels. We're going to switch to alpha, and then we're going to just crunch it together like that. So we get rid of as much of that semi-transparency as possible. In fact, we pretty much got rid of all of it there. So I've relabeled that group as /matte, and we can in fact turn it on and close it on down. And then what we're going to do is this group called unextruded text is where we're going to add this as an image mask. So right click, add image mask, and we're going to use the /matte as the image mask source. And then we just need to invert it. So now we've got our nice slash running through our text. And come to properties, we can rotate that, and we're going to be linking everything to this. You'll notice that the extrusion also updates along with this, which is quite good. So that's why we created this elaborate nest before we added our extrude. So I'm going to reset that rotation to 0. So the next thing I want to do is I want to come to my unmatted text group, and again select the rectangle tool, and I want to draw a rectangle, something like that. And this, let's make sure we've centered it up. Come to the shape, geometry. This time, yes, let's go again for 1920 for the width, but the height we want to be quite a lot larger than we had before. So let's go for something like 150, and then come to style, color. Let's set that to sort of a mid-gray, and then let's set its blend mode to multiply, and then right click, add image mask, and add the text source as the image mask. Now what this is going to be is like the sort of the burning effect of the slash having happened. But what we want to do is we want to roughen up those edges. So let's select the rectangle, and again let's use crystallize. Again, set the speed to 0, and let's have a size of around 25. And this time we can actually make use of that sort of semi-transparency, because that's giving us quite a nice rough effect. So you can see that'll help to create the sense that the flash has burnt through the letters. So next I want to create the effect of a burning edge. And to do that, I'm going to bring in a texture. So I'm going to make a new group, and I'm going to import the texture called Burn Textures. And I'm going to add an image mask to that. Now I want to dig in here, and I want to use the extruded text as the source. And I need to turn the extruded text back on again. And then I need to add one more mask, add image mask, and I'm going to use the /matte as the source. And I want to switch it to subtract and invert. And now you can see we've got this texture happening just on that inner edge there of the extrude. And we're going to do a little bit of processing of that to make it look more fire-like a little bit later on. So I've renamed that group Burning Edges. Let's close that down. Let's make another group and import another texture. And this is going to be Rough Edge. And this is just a little rough. If we solo that, you can see it's just a few pixels high, and it's an edge that we can use just on the two edges of our cutout. So let's just move this up until we get to sort of around about there. I want to slightly overlap that edge like that. So that's 45. And then I'm going to duplicate it, right click, duplicate. Let's set it to -45 on Y, so it's the other side. And let's rotate it through 180 degrees. So it's not the same. So we'll add an image mask to this group, right click, add image mask. And this time we will use our original text source as the matte source. And turn that on and off. You can see that's given this effect of a kind of a groove that the flash has ripped into the material. And that's quite nice. You might need to just color correct that, but I think that's probably not too bad just as it is. So I've renamed that Grooves. Close that down. So there's one other effect I want to do, and that's to create more destruction. We've got this effect of the kind of darkening effect, but I actually want a sort of a textural, like a bit of a dent into that. So in order to do that, I'm going to make another new group. And I'm going to import again the cracked concrete. Just going to scale it up just so it fits like that. And I'm also going to import the element called, cracks Hicon. That one there. Just need to invert this. So let's come to, color negative. And then I'm going to set its blend mode to add. So I've called this group bump. We can close it down and turn it off. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the group called unextruded text, and I'm going to right click, make clone layer. I'm going to drag that out into a new group. And then what I want to do is I want to just apply a rectangular mask to this, something like that. And we want to reset it, and let's just check its size. Let's go for 1920, and let's go for a height of 150. So let's select that clone layer, filters, stylize, and indent. And we're going to use the bump as the height source. We can turn off stretch to fit. So I'm going to bring the brightness and the ambient right down, the highlight brightness right up, and I'm going to reduce the depth to around 5, I think. 5. And now you can see we've got this interesting destruction. I think I'm going to rotate that light so we've got 270. So what we need to do is we need to feather out that mask so the edges are less sharp. So we've got as much destruction as we like. Let's go for around 50, 60, something like that. And you can see how that's really sort of added some really kind of nice, funky destruction there. And I've renamed that group destruction because that's what it is. So let's close that down. And now let's bring in our slash effect. So I'm going to make a new group, import, and I'm going to import this thing called slash fire. And again, it'll be in the comments. Okay, so that looks like this. Now, obviously, we don't want it starting right at the beginning, so let's come along to, I don't know, about sort of 15 frames. Move it to there. So slash through like that. So basically, this is an instant effect. And one of the things we're going to do to disguise the fact it's instant is to make yet another new group. And we're going to bring in generator's lens flare. And let's just make this pretty huge. We don't want any streaks, so let's turn down the streak intensity. We don't want that ring radius. We just want this really bright, intense hit like that. And let me turn that off briefly and explain why I've parked that frame. So we want it really sort of pretty much where the slash hits the middle of the object, of the frame, in fact. So what we're going to do is at that point, if we're happy with that, I think I probably am. So, size 3000, intensity, we can maybe even reduce the fall off. We just want them to be a really bright flash. I'm going to hit I and then O on the keyboard. And you see that's shortened it down to just one frame. And what that's going to allow us to do is to kind of disguise the fact that we're basically just going to cut everything else on. So one of the easiest things we can do is to come to the slash mat, open up the rectangle and come to its properties. And if you look what happens when I animate that opacity is quite a lot of it goes away. So let's, at this point here, have an opacity of 0, and we'll step forward one frame and have the opacity at 100%. Obviously we need to take care of some of the other elements, but you can see that the actual slash into the object has occurred just at that point because of our animating that map. Okay, so various other things we just need to bring on manually. So one of them is those edges. Where are they? So the burning edges there. So let's just at here, frame 22, so frame after our flash, we're going to hit I on the keyboard there, so that It won't have been there before. Same thing with the destruction, and same thing again with those grooves, that grooves group. So I on the keyboard in each case, just to bring it on instantaneously. And you'll probably have noticed also that there's that darkening effect that we created inside the text group. So dark edges there. Again, select that, hit I on the keyboard, and then if we go back, it all happens at that point. And the flash basically takes our eye off the fact that it's all happening so fast. We don't really need to worry about exactly how it's happening. So let's now talk a bit about color. I'm going to take my slash fire element there, and I'm going to come to color and colorize. And I'm going to stick with that default color for the time being. And I'm going to copy that. And the other thing we need to be sympathetic to this color is that inner fire. So whereas our burning edges, let's come to our burning edges, that burnt textures element, select that and paste that on. And now those two have got the same basic color. Now that colorize is running out because I copied it from the slash fire. So what we need to do is we need to come to the end of the timeline and hit O in order to extend it to the full duration. So what it would be nice to do is to link these two colors together so that when we change one, the other changes as well. I'm just going to rename this group slash fire so we can identify it more easily. And so this colorized copy on the burning edges, I'm going to select the remap white and add parameter behavior link, and I'm going to link it to slash fire, and then select colorize remap white to all. Now if I adjust this color here, both of those are the same color. Now let's have a look at those burning edges, because obviously we want them to be a lot more intense than that. So burnt textures, let's add a color levels, and let's just bring down the black just to increase the contrast. Sorry, bring this black value inwards and the white value inwards as well, just so we've got that much more sort of intense like that. What we might also do is just reduce the intensity of that colorize effect. So let's go for 0.6 or something, just so it's not quite so colorful. And that's better. Now what works better with these colors is just not to oversaturate them. So you really just kind of nudge in from white in each case, and it's going to look better. Similarly, if we wanted to go that way, you'll need to kind of adjust the relative values of these depending on the color you pick. So let's stick with that for the time being. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to add to this slash fire, I'm going to add a color OpenEXR tone map. And what I want to do is really punch that through a lot. So I'm going to go for maybe like 5 there. So it's much more intense, maybe not quite as much, maybe 4. So really, really kind of hits you quite hard. So I want to add a couple more elements, the first of which is going to be some smoke. So again, let's make a new group. So object new group. And I'm going to import, again, this is going to be in the comments, the thing called smoke, alt there. And that looks like that. Just going to reduce its intensity. Well, first of all, I'm going to set its blend mode to screen, reduce its intensity down to about 10. We want this to be quite subtle. Now, obviously, we need to retime this so it appears behind the actual slash. So that's starting at around frame 11 or something. What I might actually do is just make it not appear until that point there. So if we select it and then hit I on the keyboard, and then it won't appear until after our flash. Again, a little bit of sleight of hand there. So I've renamed that group smoke. Now, what we need is some particles. And to do that, I've made a separate particle project that we can import. Again, you'll be able to link to it. So I'm just going to open it up. Where are we? Particles. And again, I'll do a tutorial explaining how I've made this. So I'm going to select that group. I'm going to copy it. We can now close this. And at the top here, I'm just going to paste it. So again, now we've got these particles. We need to delay when they start. Again, we need to delay them really pretty much until the flash happens. So I'm going to select the emitter. That's starting at frame 21, like so. Now, at the moment they're white, and that's not terribly helpful. But so what we're going to do is we're going to come into the emitter, and depending on what you've chosen as your foreground colors, we're going to colorize it accordingly. So I'm going to, here under color mode, I'm going to pick from color range. And we've got two colors to play with. We could be more fancy, but I'm just going to be fairly basic. So I'm going to pick a darker color of the foreground for the darker color there. Select this one here, select that tab. You see that allows me to change the color. And then I'm going to select kind of something light off the edge there. So we've got a mix of those two colors. And what I think I want to do is I want to move this down behind everything else. So not all the way back, but let's just move it down. So if you're wondering how that's done, it's send backward there. It's command forward square bracket, just to move it back progressively till it's where I want it. I want it underneath the text like that. Now, obviously, as things stand, it doesn't look very good. It just looks like these little shapes here. But as soon as we turn on motion blur, you can see it's like, you will be able to buy those once we've got the lighting and everything else sorted out. I think that smoke is probably, the timing of that smoke is probably not quite right, and it needs to move forward a bit more, or move back a bit more, so it's more in sync with the flash like that, I think. There you go, something like that. I'm going to turn off motion blur for now because it slows us down, obviously. Now, one of the things we need to do is with this particle emitter, I've set it up to be 300 wide and 90 high. 90 is pretty good for the height, but obviously 300 is not going to be covering our long text here. So really you need to adjust this depending on the nature of your text. I'm just going to turn on adjust item and the overlays there, just so you can see the bounding box here right at the start. And if I increase the width like that, one kind of wants to go for something like that, where you're almost at the width of the object itself. And, you can increase the number of particles if you want. So I've set the birth rate maximum there at 500. Let's go up to 750. We'll have more particles, depending on what we want to do. There are various things in here that you can adjust, but we won't go into that here. And as I say, turning on motion blur is going to make the whole thing work at the end of the day. And you might want to add a smaller particle layer above the text, but I'll leave that to you to do. So one of the things we might want to do with this effect, especially if we're creating effect to publish to Final Cut or something like that, is to be able to choose the direction of the cut, as it were. And at the moment, obviously, we're coming horizontally left to right. But if we select the slash mat and rotate it, some of the stuff updates, but not all of it. And in order to get it to update, we're going to need to do some linking. So obviously those burning edges are working just fine. Those grooves are not working. So let's select that grooves group, and then on the rotation, add parameter behavior link. And from here, we can select the slash mat group as the source. And now you can see those grooves are matching that. We need to link the mat for this destruction layer. So where's the destruction layer? Let's come to that. So this rectangular mask here, again, let's right click on the rotation, add parameter behavior link. And from the drop down menu, we need to select slash mat group. And now that runs along with it as well. The other thing is this darkening effect here. Remember, there's a darkening effect, and that's down in here, dark edges. Again, rotation, right click, add parameter behavior link. From the drop-down menu, we're going to select slash matte and group. And now I think we've got everything. Apart, of course, from the emitter, which I've forgotten. Let's select the particle emitter. Where's that? Down here, emitter. And right-click on the rotation, add parameter behavior link. From the drop-down, select slash matte and group. And now the particles are shooting off in the right direction as well. One more thing, of course, and that's our slash itself. So where are we there? And the smoke. Sorry, we've got two more things to do. So slash fire, let's select that group. Let's link it. Sure you know by now, slash matte group. And where's our smoke? Smoke. Let's select the group and then add parameter behavior link and link it to slash matte group. Now, pretty much everything is going just fine. Now, there is a problem, which is that both our smoke and our slash are not quite big enough once we rotate them. So I'm going to select that slash fire element, open up the scale, and I'm going to increase that X scale to 125. It takes care of that. And where's our smoke? Going to do the same thing here. Increase that X scale to 125. And just one final problem here, because our slash light element has got an edge to it here. We'll need to mask that. So I'm just going to come back to this slash matte, just return that to 0 and select that slash fire element, come to the rectangle mask tool and just draw kind of a rectangle mask like that. Reset. Let's make sure it's sufficiently wide. So let's go for 1920. And then let's just reduce the height is good. So let's go for 600 on the height. But then let's also go for 100 on the feather. And you can see that just softened off the edges of that glow, made it a little bit more. Maybe let's go for 150 just to be super safe. And now we can come back, rotate that slash matte 20 degrees, and you can see everything is now updating. Just going to turn off motion blur because it's slowing us down a bit. So I'm going to close down some of these groups. Everything is closed down. I've renamed the lens flare group as lens flare, and just going to bring the smoke down behind it. So just above that smoke group, I'm going to make a new group. I'm going to select everything apart from lens flare and background and drop it into that new group there. And I'm going to make this one 3D. And we can add some lights. So let's add a light. And let's move that over its position. Let's move it over here, up a bit, like so. Open up the Z and set that to 150. Let's duplicate that. Again, move it over to the bottom right, like so. And maybe with this top one, sorry about the fly, increase the intensity to 150. Now, there are certain things that have gone wrong, one of which is that the slash fire thing here doesn't want to be illuminated by the lights. We need to turn that off. So select that, group, open up the shading, lighting, or rather, should I say, turn the shading off. And now that's full intensity. And again, the same thing with the burning edges, which need to be self-illuminated. So select the group, turn the shading off. And the other thing we can now do is to add a camera. So what we're going to use the camera for is to create some camera shake. I'm going to park at that point there where my flash is. I'm going to come to the camera's position and I'm going to right click, add parameter behavior, wriggle. I'm going to set the amount to about 20, the apply mode to add and subtract, the frequency up to 10. And then I'm going to hit I, let's hit I on the keyboard there, just so it only starts there. We're not interested in anything before that. And keyframe the amount there. And now let's step forward to around 40 frames and reduce that amount down to 0. And now we get that big hit as the as the explosion happens, as the rip happens. And that's going to help, especially when we turn on motion blur, because it's all going to shake rather nicely. One tip about motion blur is you don't need to live with this default shutter angle. I often find it's actually better to reduce that down to 180. It's not only quite a lot faster to render, it also just looks a little bit more realistic, I think. So I would do that. So Command J on the project will take you to the project properties, and you can adjust the shutter angle there. So one more thing I want to do is a couple of things actually. Let's adjust the camera rotation so we get a little bit more drama. So I'm going to go for +10 on the X rotation and like -15 on the Y, just so it's looking a bit more like that. Bit more drama. Again, everything more or less works. What something's not working is my slash there. I probably didn't increase it enough, so let's increase that to 150 for that. There you go. And the other thing I want to do is just to work a little bit on the look of the text. Actually, let's move that camera over a little bit on X. So I can just like that, just so initially it's centered up with our new rotation there. So around -75. So I'm going to open up my extruded text group. So if I Alt or Option click on the group, it opens up everything underneath it. And we can do a little bit more work. I think that extrude, probably I overdid the darkness of it. We can just increase it a little bit more, just so we're a little bit more aware of it there. So front and back shading, just up those two a little bit. Then what I want to do is I want to come to this cracked concrete element there inside that unmatted text group and add a color levels to it. And then I'm just going to take the black out there and just increase that. So we've got a flatter look overall, and that'll increase the effect of, come to the end here, you can see that if I turn that on and off, we've got more of a kind of contrast between those unburnt areas and the burnt areas. Might also just come to that true shade tiles. We took the level down to sort of mid-grey. Maybe we can just increase that just a little bit, like so. It's really quite a question of getting a good balance between the actual text element and the bits that we've brutally chopped away with our slash. And I think what I might do is also just increase the width of that dark element there. We can do that by, because that's a rectangle shape, we can do that by coming to its geometry and increase that maybe to 200, maybe even 250. And then we could just reduce that opacity down to about maybe 50. So it's there outside the edges of our indent burn as well. The other thing I think we could do is reduce the intensity of this true shade tiles element. So I'm going to take the black color and just bring it much closer to the other one. So it's pretty faint, something like that, I think. We don't want to make too much of a statement of that. We just want a little bit of sense of that texture, and I think that's working better. Maybe we can increase that white value somewhere around there. So one other thing I would suggest is that we apply filters, Hawaii Superglow. And if you don't own this already, then you really should go out and check it out, because it really is a fantastically useful plugin. And you can see how immediately that just kind of gives us so much more kind of photorealism. If you don't want to do that, let's turn that off or delete it, in fact. We could come into the burning edges. We could clone that burning edges element. So right click, make clone layer. We could add a filters blur, Gaussian blur, set that amount to something like 36, and then set the blend mode of this to add. And it sort of creates a sort of a glow. It's kind of a cheats glow. Might be enough for this. So I think I've covered pretty much everything. There's one thing that I would always advise you to do when you're working in motion, and that's just to make everything a little bit sharper, because the nature of Apple processing is that it's all a little bit soft and fuzzy. So I would take my extruded text group and add filters, sharpen, unsharp mask. And you can see that just kind of just brings the whole thing to life. You're suddenly not squinting at it, you've got it in focus. And I just think it looks nicer. So I hope that's been interesting. Thanks very much indeed for watching, and do check out the follow-up tutorial in which I'll be looking at creating some of the elements that have gone into making this project.